And we're live.
Good morning. Welcome. I'm Madeline Byard from Rodell, and I hope many of you got to hear Secretary Martin. Thank you, Secretary, for sharing your plan on literacy. It is so exciting to hear everything that's underway and real funding to get into classrooms to support educators. So this is an exciting day. We're really grateful for your leadership and to have you in Delaware. And for this panel, we have the honor of presenting clips from the film, The Right to Read, and a panel here of distinguished leaders and even protagonist and producer from the film. This film is about stories from an activist, educator, and families in the fight to focus on foundation of lifelong success, the ability to read. And it talks about the national state of literacy movement and implementing science of reading. So lots of lessons for us in Delaware. Secretary Martin will be part of our discussion. And in addition to her, we're very fortunate to welcome Kareem Weaver, the lead protagonist and producer of the film, co-founder of a nonprofit called Fulcrum, which is dedicated to improving literacy, and an award-winning educator, activist, and chair of the Oakland NAACP Education Committee. Thanks, Kareem, for being here. We also have Superintendent Dr. Darrell Green from the Red Clay Consolidated School District. He is the president of the Delaware Association for Chief School Officers. He has decades of experience starting as an elementary school teacher and through to the Department of Education. Thanks for being with us, Darrell. And we have Margie Lopez Waite, who is a founder and CEO of Aspira Charter School, the first dual language charter school in the state, and expanding ever since founding it. She was a Spanish educator in Appoquinimink and held management positions at Bank of America. So we're looking forward to the discussion with this great panel. And to kick us off, we are going to turn to the opening of the film to look at the challenges and the literacy crisis.
Ready? Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 merrily. Life is but a dream.
I did everything I could to put my kids in the best position to be successful.
Good, very good.
I love it.
I got black kids. They can't afford to be illiterate. I'm gonna do everything I can to make sure they get every possible opportunity. And as a teacher, I always try to do the same thing for the kids in my classroom.
Joyful. We already found the sounds. We said,
Literacy is our greatest civil right. If you can't read, you can't access anything in our society.
We got breakfast in the oven.
Thank you.
So it's already an uphill climb. If you can't read, it's like putting a gorilla on your back.
Definitely swimming upstream.
Yeah. So I'm actually trying to convince people to actually teach kids how to read.
I'm playing devil's advocate.
I know.
What is the point of learning how to read? Convince me.
Imagine being in the Stone Age and you ain't got no stone. Imagine being in the Bronze Age, you ain't got no bronze. All right, we in the information age right now. You can't read the information.
Millions of American kids struggle to read.
Americans need universal access to quality education.
Every child must start school ready to learn.
We should succeed in seeing that every 8-year-old can read independently.
We need to prepare our children to read and succeed in school so that no child is left behind.
But the way that children are usually taught how to read does not line up with decades of evidence on how they actually learn to read.
Let's give our kids that chance.
The greatest equalizer in the world is education.
I have taught every grade level. Taught high school, middle school, elementary school, and there are a few through lines, one of which is the kids can't read.
California, arguably the most progressive state in the union. Social justice minded. But when I first started teaching in Oakland, there were only 2 kids in my class of 35 who could read.
Larry, say what's up to the camera, Larry.
What's up?
All right, now, Larry, take it from the top. What does that say?
Larry ran to the cab.
My man Larry. I'm gonna say this right now on tape. My man Larry just read his first sentence by himself, and I'm very, very proud of him. And whoever sees this videotape, I'm hoping I can get his mother to see it too. I want them to know that Larry can read. And Larry will read, won't you?
Yeah.
Right on.
The question is, what becomes of those kids who don't have a foundation in reading? I can tell you what happens to them. Now, Lord works in mysterious ways. Kids, can overcome all kinds of challenges. However,
illiteracy is the pipeline to prison. It's also the pipeline to homelessness. It's the pipeline to unemployment and depression. And there are publishing companies that sell popular curriculum that do not teach our children to read, making millions of dollars.
From the day I set foot in Oakland, I realized that everything starts with literacy. Everything starts with reading. Science, math, history, you name it. If you can't read, you can't access anything else.
Reading is the basis upon which all other academic learning is built. So reading is basically going to determine so many things about how the rest of your school career goes. We have a lot of people who struggle to read. And it's kind of amazing if you look at just the basic data, like why aren't we screaming and yelling about this?
There is one test that is given across all of America called the National Assessment of Educational Progress, or NAEP. It's the only test that we have that is given consistently across the nation. We've been giving it for decades, and what it shows is, unfortunately, mostly unchanged. We are failing about 2/3 of our children.
NAEP is not a perfect test, but NAEP is telling us something essential. The data reveal a truth that we cannot ignore.
So let's just take a look at the idea of just basic. Who can read at a basic level? Well, we are in a situation where like 1/3 of our 4th graders cannot even read at a basic level. That is a lot of kids. And it is even worse, way more shocking, if you look at kids of color. Nearly half of kids of color in 4th grade cannot read at a basic level.
And then I'm wondering, well, what's wrong with me? Maybe it's my family. Maybe I'm too poor. Maybe I'm too black, too brown. Maybe it's because I speak a different language. Maybe because they went through too much. There's too much trauma. Maybe it's me. Parents have no idea. The root of the problem is that children are being taught in a way that is not working.
If it was a minority issue, then all these soccer moms wouldn't be spending $20,000, $30,000 to send their kids to private tutoring because they didn't learn how to read in school.
Kids of all races are struggling to read. The issue is who has the resources to deal with it.
So what we have in this country are a lot of well-to-do kids who are getting the help they need, and what happens is we just don't see, in some ways, the problem with the instruction because of that.
Ship.
Thank you. Such a powerful film, and thank you again, Kareem, for being with us today. You are a friend and calling Delaware a second home, which we're very happy about. So you're aware of the focus here in Delaware, but would love to just zoom out for a minute, kind of hear a bit about what you see in terms of the national scope, the movement of the science of reading, progress, challenges.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And it is the second home. I've had a chance to come a few times, had a great opportunity to engage with district leaders last night, board members and superintendents. So really happy to be here. So around the country, people have been wrestling with this openly. There were always quiet pockets of concern and laws being deliberated upon, but it hasn't, it didn't really break out into the open. I mean, you're talking about something that's been going on since, 1832, Northampton, Virginia, since Nat Turner's rebellion. So literacy laws popped up, and this is an ongoing issue. But states are beginning to reckon with this. In fact, I would say groups like the NAACP, the Ontario Human Rights Commission, have taken very, very strong stances on this. In fact, in 2024, just last year, the NAACP passed in October a national resolution about literacy. It was put forward by the President, Derek Johnson, and passed by delegates from all the states. And so essentially, it declared this a civil rights issue. And then Ontario came back and said, no, actually, it's a human rights issue. Either way you cut it is something that we have to have. And I mention it, and I'll put links to that in the chat here in a second. I mention that because oftentimes as educators, we're so busy working day to day, doing what we're supposed to do, preparing, teaching, etc., that we don't have a balcony level view and may not realize where we sit in the arc of things. This is a freedom issue. And so you may not have signed up to be a civil rights worker. I understand that, you got your credential, you got your class roster, and you teach it. But I got news for you. You have been drafted into service to a civil rights movement. A mentor of mine is a man by the name of Andy Young, who is, he was Dr. King's best friend. He was godfather to one of his sons, or his son. And he basically told me, Kareem, you got to deputize as many as you can. Our job was to, light the torch of freedom. And he was alluding to the Statue of Liberty. He said, but if you look at the feet of the statue, you'll see the chains. He said, education and literacy are the chains. He says, your generation's job to go after the feet. So I say that because that's what you all are trying to do. And I had a great opportunity to speak with some folks in Seaford recently and other districts, but I interviewed a teacher, she may be on here, Mrs. McDowell from Seaford in Blades. And she told me she's been there about 20 years and she was teacher of the year before they switched to structural literacy, they're teaching you afterwards. And I asked her, I said, you made that switch when you were, being lauded and recognized. Why did you do it? And she looked at me and she said, Kareem, you're either on the bus or you're off the bus. And I'm on the bus. And that's a freedom mindset. So I think around the country, it's a matter of us recognizing the seriousness of this issue. And then we have to follow up policy with practice and implementation and consistency. And that's really where we are right now. This is the implementation phase of this justice movement.
Thank you for speaking to that, and kudos on being part of the movement. When the film was premiered, only about 15 states had passed legislation. Delaware was one of them, but now almost every state has done some level of policy, and we know that's just one piece, and it's exciting to be moving into the implementation phase and have you with us today as the Secretary rolls out a plan really focused on implementation. So thank you. Dr. Green, we'll turn to you as the superintendent of the largest school district in Delaware. Talk to us about your approach to supporting students and implementing the science of reading.
So good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to participate in this kickoff in terms of how the state's going to address and work together with the Department of Education and our respective school districts and charters across the state to address, literacy across Delaware. And we know in Delaware it started several years ago with the passage of House Bill 304, Senate Bill 4, in terms of really making the science of reading kind of the letter of the law, so to speak, in Delaware. And so we're taking a structured, approach to literacy and really building out systems so that every student gets that explicit instruction that they need in a systemic way, but also making sure we support our educators, using supports and programs like 95% or 95 Phonics, the core program, University of Florida Literacy Initiative for foundations in kindergarten, and making sure that all of our teachers are trained, and then putting those various assessments and progress monitoring tools in place, using Acadience, for example, for reading assessment, to make sure that we are monitoring student progress and addressing tier 1 instruction accordingly, and then intervening where we need to, ensuring that, again, those interventions are aligned to student needs and not just programmatic things. We know that, there are various curriculums and intervention kits, and as we know, we go from whole language to balanced literacy to now that pendulum continues to shift. And most often in systems, we find ourselves buying programs. And so we're shifting our philosophy to really invest in the people, not programs, and understanding that we have to have high quality instructional materials. But if our educators, school leaders aren't able to really match that level of instruction to what our student needs are, we're going to continue to perpetuate and get the data that we're currently seeing across the state. And so we have our leaders participating in the Early Literacy Leadership Academy. So our director of elementary schools, our supervisors, our reading specialists, along with building level administrators are participating in not only year 1, but year 2. And we're also extending that into the upcoming year, where we're really looking at how does leadership show up in this fight to ensure that every child gets the literacy skills, supports, and teaching that they need in their tier 1 fashion. We're working with our partner organizations, such as Reading Assist. I know a lot of our colleagues across the state are familiar with Reading Assist, but how are we using those resources to actually push in to support coaching models and not necessarily pulling out? So, there are a whole host of things that we're looking at, and as we continue to monitor, making sure that there's fidelity within the implementation. What are those checkpoints? How are we assessing for learning? And then more importantly, making sure that our children are picking up books and just reading. I mean, I think, the love of reading, to simply get lost in the book and comprehend and understand not only what that book is saying through a literary standpoint, but also from an informative standpoint. It is, to Kareem's point in the opening, this is the information age. And there is a lot of information. There's a lot of disinformation. There's a lot of misinformation. And so how are we actually providing those foundational literacy skills that students are going to need to thrive, and that families also desire and deserve when they know that our students show up in not only Red Clay School District, but schools across the state, that they're getting those supports that they need to be effective citizens and members within our society. So I know our superintendents across the state are well positioned. We've taken a stance as well that literacy is a priority as we lead from the top. And how do we show up as superintendents and leaders across the state to ensure that, we're focused on this literacy challenge as well?
Thank you. And I think it's very clear the systemic, system-wide approach, and also that you're thinking about learners of all ages, which is really exciting. We'll turn to Margie and hear about how you're serving students at Aspira and maybe some specific approaches to meeting the needs of multilingual learners.
Thank you, Madeline. What I love about this is that, as you'll hear, all of us are on the bus, right? So whether it's Darrell talking about what's going on at the districts, whether I'm talking about what's going on at Aspira and all the charter schools in our state, what I love is that this call to action that is being led by our Secretary of Education is really getting us all on the same page, right? We all love local control, but this is one thing that we all needed to be on the same page about and really be on the same team about. So we're doing a lot of similar things that you heard Darrell speak to. I think one thing that I think is unique at Aspida is that we recognize that, all of us districts, charters, we all have a vision and a mission, and we know that that vision and mission sort of guide us in what we do. It's the why we do what we do. And so with this literacy emergency, we decided to develop a K-12 literacy vision, and that's really been guiding our work. And it really has helped for the leaders to understand the why, but also the teachers and now our students and our families to understand the why behind it, because this does need to be a collective effort. The teachers can't do it alone. The school leaders can't do it alone. We need the whole community to be a part of this. And I love that the documentary shows the impact of family support as well. But I also want to give a shout out to some partnerships that we've been privy to take advantage of thanks to the Department of Education, like School Kit. School Kit has become a partner with us. They provide ongoing professional learning. They're working with our leaders to really build their capacity as instructional coaches and to help them with the look-fors as they go into the classrooms to see the teaching and the learning happening with the science of reading. We also have the partnership with the New Teacher Center. And so all of those collectively, I think this is a great example of the great things that we can do when we work together. And with the Department of Education, all charters, all districts, all focused on the same goal, and that is for our students to become competent and capable readers, but as Darrell said, joyous readers, right? There's joy in reading. And yes, you need to read to access information, but reading also opens up so many doors and worlds and just creativity. And I know as a child, it was my escape. It's the way that I was able to overcome trauma, being able to dive into a book. So we want all of that for our students. And when it comes to multilingual students, I think that's another level of complexity that we have at Aspida. And I'm sure Academia Alonso would attest to this as well. Our goal is for our students to be bilingual and biliterate. So when we talk about literacy, it's a two-prong approach. We're building that literacy in Spanish and English. And it's really important that all of our teachers understand how those two languages connect. So that it is doable, but it has to be part of our focus as well. We will not sacrifice one language for the other. We are fully committed to both.
Thank you so much. And Secretary Martin, maybe you can, you've talked about your plan and the resources that the state is going to provide, but maybe from a district and charter perspective, talk about the priorities and kind of what advice would you give?
Well, first of all, I just appreciate this panel and everybody's voices being here today. None of this is going to happen alone. And I think districts are on all kinds of a continuum, just like our learners are on a continuum. So where are you at this point in time, and what is your next best right move? I always say equity is every student gets what they need, when they need it, in the way that they need it, where they need it. And I mean that for teachers too. And so district leaders or teachers that are listening and thinking about the district context that they're in, if you're just starting out with the science of reading implementation, thinking about how do you do this? What are our moves? What are our steps? You got to work with your teacher leaders. You work together as a team. And science of reading and implementation is where it's at. It's not just something that sits on a shelf. What does implementation look like? So I think with my teacher hat or my principal hat, Dr. Green said it. It's people, not programs. And so wherever you are in this continuum of implementation, remember the people. Bring your teachers, your leaders, your families, the entire community into a clear and honest pilot adoption if you haven't adopted the materials yet, or you need to shift to higher quality materials, different materials because you're not getting the results. Clearly, materials don't teach kids, teachers do, but teachers need the right tools in their hands. Are you making something out of glass or you're making something out of wood? I'm using a craftsman analogy, but people that work with glass use totally different tools than people that work with wood. You need the right tools. So making sure teacher voice, student engagement, access to strong Tier 1 instruction is guiding every step, every decision you're making, put people at the center of it, not just the programs. Of course, choose the right curriculum. We have all the tools that you need vetted for you, but select those high quality instructional materials that are truly aligned to the science of reading and to your own district's literacy mission and vision. I love that Margie said, like, local is important. Local decision making matters. As a teacher and former superintendent, I get it, but to have a statewide vision and plan is okay. Top down only will never work, but bottom up only doesn't work either. Just let everybody do whatever they feel like doing. And because they think it'll work, you need both. And the middle out, Michael Fullen's research around middle out reform, that actually is what matters the most. And so don't just look for the quick fix, the silver bullet, the easiest thing to buy, plug and play, snake oil, silver bullet, buy this, you're good to go. No, choose the right curriculum, then invest in real professional learning. Teachers love to teach, which means they also love to learn. So every single adult in Delaware who is part of working in the early literacy space, teachers, leaders, paraprofessionals, all of the educators in the system need the training, they need the collaborative planning time, they need the coaching that connects directly to daily classroom practice. Because when you connect to daily practice, then you're connecting to learners and you're focused on the learner, not just the curriculum. And then just create the systems that support teachers in real time, no matter how beautiful your professional development plan is, and I hope they're very beautiful, they need to be always looked at for, did they meet the need? How will you know? When you use ongoing common formative assessments for learning, you'll know, did that PD help or not? You need job-embedded feedback, and you need coaching that helps educators use these materials well and internalize the lessons and not just become the lesson, the curriculum book on the hip kind of teacher just reads from the book and script it. Scripting matters, coherence, scope and sequence, all of those things matter, but then own the content and know your learners and figure out when to slow down, speed up, adjust, change, pivot. Stay focused on the core, get the fundamentals right, but be willing and able to change based on real-time data and feedback, not opinions and moods or flashy new trends, but what are the students telling you? You taught it, did they learn it, did they not? What do you need to do to pivot? You bought the best curriculum on the planet, it had every part of science of reading dialed in, and a kid didn't learn. So what do you need to do? Readjust, keep learning, and respond to the students that are in front of you, not some idealized classroom or some perfect thing that somebody says, just do this and the skies will open and everybody will be proficient. Keep adjusting. And then there's districts that are farther along, so that if you've already started the journey, everybody has room to grow. Nobody is done. Every single district, no matter how far along you are on the journey, every teacher, no matter how skilled you are, have room to grow. And so always ask yourself, shift from what should I do to, did what I just do work? How well did it work? Deepen your practice. Keep giving yourself time to internalize the units and lessons. Look at student work. Adjust the instruction based on what you see. Tighten up your assessments. Do a landscape check of what assessments are you actually using. Are there assessments that are not giving you feedback and data that you need? Why are we still giving them? I know I'm opening a can of worms by saying that. But if it's not helping improve instruction, we need to talk about it. Make sure the assessments that you're using are giving you the leading indicators that you need, the information that tells teachers early and clearly where students are on their path to mastery. The goal is daily actionable insight, not end of the year data when it's too late to do anything about it.
Thank you so much. And thank you for bringing us back to the classroom. Educators and students, we are going to turn to another clip and hear from an educator in the film.
Charged. My first year was honestly such a mess. This is just, these are called base 10 blocks. We count the days that we've been in school every day. I didn't even know that I was supposed to have Lucy Calkins' units of study in my classroom until, I think, the second week. Whole language, which is what that is, or balanced literacy, has been proven not to work for my students. This school is the lowest performing in reading in the district. I mean, a lot of it, I think, is because the teacher turnover rate is extremely high. And also, I think because we have been forced to use units of study, and 2 years ago, that's what I was teaching. The lesson was basically you cover up a word with a Post-it note and you're reading a book, and the students are supposed to guess the word. What word do you think would go here? And they guess random words. They don't know what it is because it's covered up. So then you pull back a little so that they can see one letter, and then you pull back a little bit more, and then you see who's right. Who guessed right? I don't know. I'm not a magician. You know what I mean?
Mom got the balloons.
Oh, how did you know that word said balloons?
Because on the picture I saw balloons. I paint the fence purple.
Yeah, it's amazing how you're reading without even looking at the words.
I paint the door purple.
Great.
Look at all that purple.
Let's see what happens when we take away the pictures.
I put my swig up.
There's been a lot of opinion about how children learn to read, and there's been a lot of conflict over the years about this. In fact, it was referred to as the reading wars at the end of the 20th century. It basically boiled down to whether children need to be taught some very explicit rules in order to learn to read, or whether they naturally learn to read.
What we've been arguing about for a really long time is really the difference between what is a bottom-up approach to learning how to read or a top-down approach to learning how to read. So the bottom-up approach essentially says you start with the pieces. You start with the letters and the sounds, and you build up your knowledge to understanding the whole thing. But then you had another crew that believed equally strongly in their idea. When we're teaching kids how to read, teach them whole words. Don't teach them the little parts. And in fact, there was a strong belief that teaching them the little letters and sounds and all the parts was going to be confusing, distracting, and boring, tedious, not necessary.
Becoming a skilled reader takes practice and repetition. I mean, the brain has to literally build these pathways from each of the lobes for students to learn how to read.
And the method that became popular, that made millions of dollars teaching kids to guess and use visual clues, is known as whole language, or balanced literacy. In the 60s, there was a system known as 3Qing, where kids would guess words and use clues. Decades later, knowing cueing doesn't work. We still have Lucy Calkins and Fontes and Pinnell selling a version of this idea.
And so they're en masse guessing is really what it is.
For some reason, the status quo in America keeps bringing us back to this more whole language balanced literacy approach to teaching. I think because it's more appealing if the basic idea is that exposure is enough. If only kids would just figure out how reading works on their own. But it doesn't work that way.
Thank you. And we all know educators that are committed and want the support to do the right thing. And so we'd love to hear from Dr. Green and Margie about the supports that you've been putting in place and what successes you're seeing in terms of the materials, coaching, professional learning, and what we're doing to equip educators to feel confident.
Thank you for that. I think for us, it starts with new teacher orientation. We know, again, when we talk about SB4 and requirements for teacher prep programs and now the science of reading needs to be embedded in the higher ed curriculum, and, with the hope or goal that they come into the workforce already, having those foundational teaching skills. But we know onboarding is, I think back to my first year and just seeing the clip that we just read. There's a lot for an educator to enter a classroom, a lot of moving parts. Even outside of literacy, they're generalists, so they're teaching all subject areas. And how do we really synthesize to understand that literacy is a foundational skill that is cross-curricular? And so it starts with new teacher orientation, providing them with a lot of supports, connecting them with strong teams, making sure that professional learning communities and PLCs are focused. And that's also a feedback loop. I vividly remember when I first came to Red Clay back in 2019, constantly hearing a lot of our educators saying, their frustration was that they had to be at this point in this year for scope and sequence or in a pacing guide, and didn't feel like they had the freedom to teach. And so having that constant buy-in from our educators to make sure that the resources that we're providing them match the instruction and the intent that they look to deliver each and every day, so that educator buy-in is important. And then making sure that we, again, synthesize it, giving them the resources, whether that's ongoing professional development, job-embedded professional development, because oftentimes we do it in isolation. It tends to be one and done, and we never go back to revisit it. So how is that reoccurring? Align with assessments, making sure that our administrators are providing, the proper building level schedule and meeting the needs, so that, those feedback loops and those cycles are centered around teaching and learning. So it's a lot. And I know a lot of times our educators feel overwhelmed, but a big part of that is for us at my level in particular is to make sure that we're listening and that we're meeting their needs, and ensuring not only are we giving them the curriculum resources that they need, but we're giving them the professional learning and the job embedded coaching. And so working with our reading specialists, for example, to not just be a part of a referral system through our multi-tier systems of support, where we're referring students who have a need to the reading specialist, as much as it is the reading specialist actually pushing in to help those educators within the classroom expand that knowledge base and that skill set, so that those foundational literacy skills are being embedded in the core teaching around Tier 1 instruction. And I think we can't emphasize that enough or overemphasize it, that it's really focused on that Tier 1 instruction. So when we look at our instructional framework, it's how are we centering everything around Tier 1 instruction, and then how do we build those ancillary intervention pieces around that. And so it's a multi-layer process. It's tiered in how we support our educators. We do have a lot, whether it's your veteran teacher who a lot of this quote unquote new age curriculum and resources now being put in place. How do we use their knowledge and ensure that when we do look at whether that would be curriculum or resource adoption through our curriculum cadres, that we're actually getting their input as we go along the way, that they see themselves as a part of the change that we're desiring, and not that change is just simply happening to them.
And I'll just add, this is another example of how we're all on the same page. So everything that Darrell mentioned, I would say is happening at Aspida, and I'm sure it's happening at every charter school. And I think that's the great thing about this time and this place that we're in, that we're all collectively on the same page, really sharing the same goal. And one thing that I will add is that, we feel very strongly at Aspida of empowering our teachers, so that they're not being told what curriculum to use, but we want their input. So when we changed to our current curriculum, we did a pilot. We collected feedback from the teachers. They helped to decide which curriculum was the right fit. But I do want to address one thing at this point in our conversation, because as I mentioned to Kareem last night, I watched the entire documentary, and if you haven't, I strongly recommend that you do. But it's a great documentary, and it really, as an educator, really does touch your heart and really shows you why this is so important. But one thing that it also does is sort of villainize curriculum, and it sort of hits on this whole idea of whole language versus phonics. And that's the part where, I have to disagree with Kareem, and the fact that we talk about these two whole language and phonics as if it needs to be either or. And we know that for effective teaching, it's and it's having both working together. That's where the great teaching happens. And I will say that as a school that had Lucy Calkins reading and writing workshop for 12 years, that we saw great gains in our students, and our data showed that. But it was because our teachers were empowered to be part of that curriculum. There is no curriculum out there that is perfect. They all have flaws, they all have gaps. But if you empower your teachers to be part of that decision process, they will show you and tell you where the gaps are. And collectively, we were able to supplement the curriculum in order to make sure that we also had the phonics piece, because that was a critical piece as well. It was not being ignored. But I will say that as a dual language immersion school, what we did love about that curriculum was that it did connect equity, and it was culturally relevant, and it allowed us, especially for those bilingual, multilingual classrooms, it created the space for students' home language, their cultures, their stories. So I want to be sure that that we don't, when we have two opposing views, as we did with the reading wars, usually the best solution lies in the middle. So I want to defend our school for being one of those schools that used that curriculum. And I do defend the fact that it had value. And it was never intended to ignore the phonics. And I think one thing that we have to be careful of in this space is that we have enough division as it is in our society and our country. And we can't have division when it comes to education. We need our leaders, we need our teachers, we need our parents, we need our community, our students, our families. We need everybody collectively sharing in the common goal. And if we start shaming and blaming, that's when we're going to get off track, and we're going to derail this great momentum that we have right now. So I do have to say that, because I know I have plenty of my teachers on this call right now listening to this session. And so want to be sure that we respect the fact that, and I made this comment last night, and I will sort of revise my comment. Curriculum is important. I will agree with you on that, Kareem. The one thing though is that teachers, like you saw with Miss Causey in the documentary, she recognized where there was gaps and there was flaws in the curriculum, and she was empowered to then do something differently, just like you did in the classroom in the documentary as well. So I think that's the other thing, is that our teachers are that magic ingredient that we have, and we have to give them voice, and we've got to give them the empowerment to be part of the decision process when we are selecting curriculum.
Thanks, Margie. Kareem, did you want to respond to that or add any insight?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In love. Sure. Let me just say this. In the film, you mentioned Miss Causey. Sabrina's a good friend of mine. Oakland Unified used to have units of study, and it just wasn't working in her classroom, and she didn't know what to do. So she came to the NAACP, and she's like, I need help. I just need help. And we ended up finding her some support. She started to use it in this program called Bookworms, which actually was originated in Delaware. And what she said was it provided clarity and provided structure and the routines that allowed her to do things in a way that was going to that helped her. This isn't about blaming teachers. Let's be clear about that. I know, and we're very sensitive about that, and we should be, because there's a lot of negativity out there. But as a long-term educator, I can tell you that teachers want nothing more than to serve their kids well. It doesn't feel good to be blamed or have fingers pointed at us, but at the end of the day, I'm gonna tell you, the feeling that you get when your whole class is moving forward. There's nothing like it. You want to talk about teacher retention? Let people be successful in their work, getting all kids to read without them having to go to Kumon, some tutoring service or something like that. So we have to be willing to have some thicker skin. And It doesn't mean that we're to blame for things. We don't. Teachers don't make curriculum decisions. We don't make. That's not. We're not in charge of the schedule and calendar. That's not. But at the point of delivery, people often look at teachers and think it's our fault. What I want to tell people is that you have agency um, to break free of the dogma and this binary, left or right, east or west, red or blue, whole language or phonics. Like you can get out of that if you just follow the evidence of what works. And last thing I'll say about this, I have more, but I think I have a different section I can say more. If I don't, let me know and I'll run it now. It's not a matter of does it work. And let me just make this point. There are many things that can work and that do work for about 40% of kids. That's according to research. 40% of kids, you're going to learn to read almost, just do something and do it consistently. Matter of fact, many people don't even remember how they learned to read. They learn to read. But that group is about 40% of the population. For teachers, that's 91% of the workforce. We are the survivors. It's difficult for us, and that's based on over 30,000, surveys. I give these surveys of educators, and they choose which one they are. So our default settings will betray us. It doesn't make sense because our learner's bias, how we learn, it clouds our understanding of the issue. It's difficult for us to perceive of the world that most children are in. They have to have it a certain way. It's not that other things don't work. The question is, how can we get the greatest number of kids proficient in tier one? That's the issue. So I want to make sure everyone hears this because what we're doing, if we're using balanced literacy, for example, or some other method or Montessori, it's not that it doesn't work. It can work and often does work to great effect for many children. But I think that's not what Secretary Martin is saying. She can speak for herself, but it sounds like she and the leaders in Delaware are trying to get all kids. And if you want all kids, you have to start in tier one, narrowing that funnel so that by the time they get to intervention, it's a small group. And to do that, we have to figure out what works best for the greatest number of kids. We have to have the right leadership. We have to have the right materials. We have to have the right. There are some things that have to be in place, and our methods do matter. And that's not for blame, but as educators, man, tell me what it really is so I can serve these babies. Like that's what it is. And the last thing before I turn it back over, the Department of Defense, the Justice Department, United States Justice Department, put out a report 30 years ago, 1993. It talked about how to reduce recidivism. In fact, I made a tinyurl, so tinyurl.com prison report. And if you read that, it's about 40 pages. It is incredible. And what they say is that low reading is not just a correlate to why students or children are end up incarcerated. They said it's a cause. And they talk about what they called alphabetics, what we would call today phonics, and how there are lots of different methods and things that happen. And the kids coming in there, they just can't read. And this is 30 some years ago. And we can talk about the school to prison pipeline in very, euphemistic terms. But what they're saying is, spare us. They think that we are too busy arguing about other things around the edges that we don't get to the heart of the issue. What the jails are saying is the reason why they're in here is because they can't read. And the people who could do something about this, the universities, the school districts, the nonprofits, are involved in this game of I forget the word they use, but basically this chess game of methods and deliberations and all this. They say we just need to get them to read. And so I would just say, I hear you. I understand. No one's blaming teachers, but I am not. I have to be able to look my children in the eyes and the parents in the eyes and say I did the best that I could. And for me, I'll speak for me. I want to be able to do that in good conscience and say I did the best for the greatest number of kids with what I had and what I knew and what I had an opportunity
to learn. So that's how I would respond to that. Anything else, I'll wait until later in the
Thank you.
conversation.
We have time for everybody to kind of make some last comments before we turn it over to the secretary for her closing remarks. So maybe we'll go back to Margie, Darrell, and then Kareem. And really anything that you want to leave us with, advice for educators, things that we haven't talked about around the collective and community engagement, early childhood, really open it up to each of you and then turn it back to the secretary. Thank you.
Go ahead, Marjorie, or you gonna go?
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
No, so I think again, with both what Margie and Kareem are both actually saying is, you know, we need strategic curriculum adaptations, right? It's this idea that you don't adopt, you know, because any adoption is going to run into a point, right? No curriculum is going to be aligned so that you're going to follow it to the blueprint where it's going to change because our children are different. And we have to look at that, how we as leaders support and monitor regular assessment data to make those adaptations to meet student needs, to explain what the needs are to children or families, to our partners, to really take a holistic approach around this literacy crisis. To Kareem's point, like if you can't read, you're in trouble in life. So literacy is life, and we got to look at reading as in the sense of it's an action and not the now, right? Like let's turn it into action. Let's make everything that we do through this challenge as a state, whether you're at a charter, you're at a district school, to know that we all serve the same community. I mean, I think we realize in Delaware that there's a lot of mobility. You live in one district, you work in another, your children are choice to another. So it's incumbent upon all of us to really align ourselves around how we work together, from our earliest learners to our students who are in our secondary schools, because to be quite honest, a lot of our secondary schools who, you know, are doing their due diligence to get them ready in our career technical education pathways and programs, but a lot of those students don't have those foundational literacy skills that they need to actually thrive in those CTE pathways. So it's incumbent upon all of us, public-private partnerships, business communities, early learning communities, to really get behind this and know that we have to do better. And in the end, the data will bear itself out to show that our inputs and the investments that are being made are getting a quality and a good return, because Delaware will be better for it. And so, you know, again, we appreciate the opportunity as school district, and I can speak on behalf of my superintendent colleagues and leaders across the state that this is chief among our priorities as we look at this, and how we want to support our educators to live and be their best as they show up every day on behalf of children across the state of Delaware. So thank you for the opportunity and joy, and we're looking forward to working and collaborating with the department on these initiatives in the coming days, weeks, months, and years ahead.
So I'll piggyback off of that, Darrell. So literacy is life. And so literacy starts at birth. So I will put in a plug-in again, as I did last night, that I thought the most compelling part of the documentary was seeing how it starts with Kareem reading to his young children, and then seeing other parents engaging in reading with their young children. And so we know the importance of exposing children from birth to vocabulary, to reading, and helping our families understand the importance of that. But I have to also put in a push that we need universal pre-K in our state. We need to have more students in structured quality pre-K programs so that they have the right, that they have the head start that they need going into kindergarten. We see the difference in our kindergartners that are coming from those quality programs versus those that don't have access to those programs. So I know that right now, just like good educators, we sort of chunk and sort of take things into groups. And so right now it's not part of the scope of this initiative, but I know that it's important to the governor and to the Secretary of Education. So, you know, want to continue to push that. And one other thing I want to plug is, you know, another initiative that we've been given, thanks to the Department of Education, and that partnership is something called Parent Camp, and using Parent Camp as a way to engage more of our families and being able to make that connection so that we're not they're not coming into a meeting. We're not lecturing to them and preaching to them. They're coming into parent camp and we're having these great community discussions. And that's been a way that we've been able to sort of bring them into the fold. And another thing that I will also stress, because we've seen it in the districts like Seaford and Milford, and we've brought it to Aspida as well, is really getting the family involved and having family literacy programs and services, because if we can make the adults in the family stronger in their literacy, they will be more capable of supporting those children at home. So all of that to say that we're all in this together. We've got to do it together. And I'm excited about the fact that we are doing this statewide. So thank you for this opportunity.
I'll just take a
Great.
moment.
Final words from you. Yeah.
Thank you. Sure. So really quickly on my end, I want the educators here, the teachers specifically, and the paras, anyone who's in front of kids, to just know and own this. There's no, and you already know, there's no roadmap, blueprint, framework, strategic plan that ever taught a kid to read. You need those policies. It's necessary but insufficient. It takes educators as modern day civil rights workers and saying, not on my watch, not on my watch. Others can debate it, but I'm getting on the bus. I'm going to embed language development in my lessons. I'm going to love through my learning and my preparation, not to villainize anybody else, but I realize that love is a lesson plan. Love is how I prepare every day, how I work with my colleagues, how I go after all kids, not on my watch. And the last thing I say is my daughter, she was referenced in that opening scene of that movie, where she says, "I love it," and as she learned to read, she's now a junior over at Bowie State. It turns out that my little girl is dyslexic. We taught her how to read. I taught her how to read. I'm pretty good at it. When she got to school and using the materials and methods that they had, she went backwards. By the time she got to 8th grade, she was crying in the bathroom, eating lunch by herself, because the things that were being taught literally unraveled her schema, and she was lost. And I was so busy teaching and leading that I didn't realize social justice starts at home. I mention that because the first rule in education is do no harm. And everyone's different, but if most educators I know, they take that to heart. Like I can be a lot of things, but I'm not going to do harm to kids. I'm going to make sure that I'm putting myself and them in the best position. I'm going to get on this bus and I'm going to ride it till the wheels fall off, and we're going to grow and we're going to support these babies. It is possible. It is doable. Whether the kid is dyslexic or they learn to read almost like in the air, they can do it with your help. But it's got to be the teachers. We love Secretary Martin, and we love the blueprint, the roadmap, and wonderful, amazing. And this is your profession. Education is your craft. And I'm so glad to be here to just talk to you a little bit, but this is you got to own it. You got to get on the bus. So thank you for having me, and I'll turn it over to the next person.
Well, we're honored to have you, and you're welcome back. Come back to Delaware anytime. Thank you so much to our panel for being here and for our interpreters. And I'm turning it over to the secretary for her closing remarks. Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you so much, Madeline, and to the whole team here. Really important conversation. And like I've said since the day I got here, that teachers are what matter most, and supporting our educators. The programs don't teach, the teachers do, and supporting our teachers matters. And so teachers cannot be expected to build this or do this alone. A statewide literacy plan is not the answer, as Kareem just said, but it's important to have a vision. Top down, bottom up, middle out. You need both. One without the other does not work. And that plan comes with support. And so you see coming from the Department of Education, the professional learning that I know teachers care about, that matters. Some teachers don't need letters training or Ames pathway. They already know it. They spent their time teaching. Those were the gaps in their knowledge, and they have filled their own gaps. But the ones that don't know the science of reading, I spent my life teaching myself that. I learned it. That's why I wrote about teaching literacy and spelling in particular in the context of a reading classroom. Spent time learning that. But those that don't know it, they need deep knowledge, they need deep skills to build the strong readers, writers, thinkers, and speakers. And like I said earlier, we're talking a lot about reading today. Please don't forget about writing and listening and science and art and math. Literacy goes across multiple coding systems, and being a proficient teacher across all the coding systems really matters. And so we work closely with everybody to make sure whatever gaps might exist for you are gaps that we are here to support and meet you wherever you are on your journey. And if any teacher is sitting in a classroom with a room full of students who are not learning, all of them, not a few of them, but all of them, then look to your peers, your school leaders, your superintendent, your Department of Education, and say, I need something else. This isn't working. Whatever you've put in my hands, this tool that we thought would be the tool, that would be the magic thing, isn't working for some of my kids. I need more help. We're here for that. No teacher should ever say, I was given the wrong thing and have to go outside for someone else to give that to them. So we will share the work. We will share the responsibility, and we will have shared accountability. No finger pointing, no shaming, no blaming each other. Programs, internal, external, explicit, implicit bias lives everywhere, in publishers, in classrooms, in professional development. But we will have our eyes squarely on our students because we're teachers at heart, and that's what teachers do. So this shared commitment that we must have to give every child the ability to read is how we move forward together. So the plan I laid out, I got to call it something, but people always say, well, plan doesn't work. But you got to have a plan. It's not theoretical. It's built on what works by teachers, for teachers, what I have done myself, what I have built at a school level and at a systems level. You've got to be systemic. You need strong daily reading instruction in every K-3 classroom. You need time and coaching for teachers. You need teams that bring more caring adults into kids' lives, that know them by name, strength, and need. You need simple tools that reduce burdens on teachers, not add to them. And you need families as full-time partners in learning. I mean, I made it sound so simple. What's underneath all of that are layers and layers of support and quality leadership. So yes, my team and I will be out there with you, shoulder to shoulder. We will be celebrating the bright spots, looking for the pain points. Where is there a gap in practice, and how do we address that gap? I don't want to fix this. I want to solve it once and for all at its root cause. And I want to stand beside you wherever the support is needed for your own growth and development, and take it into action. So here's my ask for you as you step into your daily professional learning, your day of professional learning today. Keep students first. Protect daily reading time like it's sacred, because it is. If you walk away with nothing else, keep your students first and protect daily reading instruction. It is sacred. Aim your efforts where it matters most. Use data to know if what you're doing is working. And if it's not, adjust. And if you don't know how to adjust, don't blame the kids. You taught, you had the perfect lesson, you had the perfect tool, you did your teaching. Check if they learned. If they didn't, don't move on and send them off to a tutor. Figure out why it didn't work. Meet your students where they are and pivot. And if you don't know how to pivot, get into your team approach and say, my kids got stuck here. Where did your kids get stuck? Well, another teacher got them to move. How'd you get them to move? Oh, I never thought of trying it that way. Keep doing that. And then I will lastly say, make your progress visible. Track your growth by student, by subgroup, celebrate your wins, and share your results with your teams. Share them with your families. Let them see. Make it visible. Let's not overcomplicate this. Start small, start real. One quick coaching cycle for one group of students who need you the most, that you're stuck on. Gather around that and figure it out. Get one family touch point and say, here's what we're going to do tonight. This is what's going to happen, our next best step. These small moves done together across the beautiful state of Delaware will change systems and outcomes, not for some kids, but for each and every student in this great state, making Delaware the national model that it can be We have the bright spots already. I've already seen where it's working in Delaware. Don't be confused. We have best in case examples for our country already here in Delaware. We do not need to go outside to look for the answers. They exist here, not yet at scale. So we will become the national model for how a small state tackles a big challenge, not through slogans, plans, and programs, or buying new things, but through daily practice with right support in every classroom. We can do this together.
Thank you so much, Secretary. Great way to start the day. And I think that wraps up this morning panel before folks head off to their next professional learning opportunity. And Alyssa's going to cover any final housekeeping.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. For our directions for the rest of the day, if you go to our state professional development app, you will see links to all of the sessions for the rest of the day. You'll also have access to your session materials, and you'll be able to access the post-session feedback link as well. You'll have a link to that feedback form in every session, so you don't have to worry about which one you go to. Every time it will take you to the correct link for the feedback. If you need support along the way, please go to the main page of the State Professional Development Day website. At the bottom, there'll be a link to a support Zoom where you can get live help throughout the day. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day and enjoy your sessions.